Hello and welcome back to another episode of the On the Sideline podcast with Jackson and Kyle. I am Jackson, and I'm joined here, as always, by the man who was no one's biggest disappointment in 2021. Kyle, how are you doing?
You didn't ask my wife that question. It's a very real possibility, but at the same time, I'm doing good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing good as well. What would you say? What was your biggest disappointment of 2021?
Biggest disappointment. I don't know. Guess the Patriots losing in the playoffs, although that was technically 2022.
Yeah, I guess I was also thinking immediately just thinking about sports. So I guess that shows I think our lives doing pretty good. The first things we can think about are sports.
Yeah, I also have no other thing in my life. So, I have that.
Yeah, I think so. Kyle, hopefully this show will not be the biggest disappointment. So just to let people know what we're doing here, we're going to go through each team and just say what the biggest disappointment of last year was. We're kind of leaving it vague. Could be a player, could be a coach, could be whatever. But what was the biggest thing that was disappointing in the 2021 season? So including the playoffs, but 2021 is the, works better for a title.
All right, let's do it. I guess the question is, so you have went ahead and did the NFC. I have the AFC. So you're going to say your NFC teams, and then I'm going to react to those takes. Who are we starting with here?
Okay, let's just go ahead. Let's start off with maybe a bit of a warm take right off the bat. Maybe a bit hot. I'm not sure if it's not flaming hot, but maybe medium hot. Dallas Cowboys. Biggest disappointment. I'm going Dak Prescott. I'm thinking Dak Prescott was the biggest disappointment. Not that he was horrible, but it's like you're paying him big money. You're it almost felt like they were expecting him potentially to be like a fringe MVP candidate, and he didn't take that level. Now, maybe that was, too high of expectation to put on him anyways, but that's why I have him here.
Yeah, I guess the question is, are those realistic expectations for Prescott? I mean, you still look at the numbers. It's, 4,500 yards, 68% completion percentage, 37 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. He looked less explosive running the ball, but I guess that should be expected after the major injury he had. Yeah, I mean, I still think he was really good. But at the same time, I completely understand. I'm pretty sure we picked Ezekiel Elliott last year, so you can't really pick him again, even though, he wasn't the worst. I don't know. I probably would have gone McCarthy here, but I understand Prescott as well.
Yeah, well, but then Mike McCarthy and Ezekiel Elliott kind of meet expectations.
Did McCarthy meet expectations?
Maybe he might have met my expectations.
That's fair.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's fair. Yeah, I mean, he had his ups and downs. McCarthy did.
Yeah, I thought you were just going to go full-on hater mode and pick Trayvon Diggs. I was going to laugh.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to quite go that far. Let's move on to we're going to stick with the NFC East. Eagles were a tough one. I didn't have a clear one for the Eagles. I decided to go with the lack of Jalen Reagor improvement. Jalen Reagor, someone who did not have a great rookie year, was picked obviously ahead of Justin Jefferson, so a lot of criticism there. But it's like, hey, it's 1 year. Let's see what he can do his second year. It seemingly got even worse in his second year. So the Jalen Reagor stuff is, I think, again, not a ton of. This was an optimistic year for the Eagles, but that was probably one of the disappointing parts of it.
Yeah, like you were saying, he had 57 targets, came down with 33 catches, less than 300 yards, and 2 touchdowns for the season. That's a bust. That's just straight up a bust. It doesn't seem like it's going to get any better, and I mean, I don't expect it to get any better. And they've not only gone out to get a wide receiver last year to make up for it, they added another wide receiver this year with the first-round pick to make up for it with A.J. Brown. So it's very clear that the ship has sailed on this point on Jalen Reagor.
Yeah, and you just memorized those stats too. You didn't even have them up or anything.
No, I didn't pull anything up.
Yeah. God, incredible work though. I mean, real quickly, just getting to Jalen Reagor stats up. You had that ready to go.
I'm on it today, man.
Yeah, this is great work. And again, for the Eagles, like it was an optimistic season. Like I almost considered like is Jalen Hurts here? Like Jalen Hurts, like I think this was a good thing that he did. Like he wasn't amazing, but he was solid. So I don't have anything else I could even put here.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think it would have been a little too harsh to put Hurts. He was bad in that playoff game, but as a young quarterback, this is the kind of development you wanted to see from him this season.
Yeah. Let's move on. Let's talk some balls because Kyle, the balls are back. We're talking about what the balls did last year. They were the balls then, so we can call them the balls.
The balls.
Yes.
The nickname should never die. That's really the truth.
Yeah, I guess we can just keep calling them the balls. Why not? Well, Commanders, who cares?
Yeah, I mean that's not a fun nickname anyway. So
Right.
we're team balls for life.
Yes, team balls for life indeed. The balls, biggest disappointment. I thought two different things that could go up. I decided to go with coverage regression. I thought that, their defense was good last year. It was very disappointing to see it kind of take a massive step back this year.
Yeah, and that was a huge thing with this defense. It didn't seem like anything was really working for this group. And it was pretty surprising based on what we saw last year. And then not only that, the big free agent names they signed. I guess you probably look at it in the microcosm of it would be the regression in William Jackson's game, where it looked like a mistake that Cincinnati let him go. And all of a sudden he's showing real regression in Washington. And, you have real questions about his future too.
Yeah, Darby letting him go, kind of in hindsight, maybe he did fit that scheme very well, so maybe that was a mistake. The other area I thought about going here was maybe like the quarterback play concern, where I think Heineke showed that he belongs in the NFL but isn't a star, and then Fitzpatrick getting hurt week one, that kind of was another disappointment.
It definitely is a disappointment. I guess the problem is you can't really blame either of those guys because once again, it comes down to what was your expectations for those guys. Were you
Hmm.
expecting one of those two to lead your team to win the division? Maybe Fitzpatrick, but at the same time, he didn't really get the chance to because he was hurt. I think it would have been harsh to put it on either of those quarterbacks when I guess it'd be a front office thing. Like if you said front office didn't perform.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, if we were doing front office, the Giants would definitely that would be there. We're not doing that. I decided to go Kadarius Toney / Kenny Galladay as biggest disappointment. And again, both of them were banged up, so neither one of them were like fully healthy. That was obviously a chunk of it. But we thought this receiving core could be really good at the beginning of the season. It ended up, when by the time Jake Fromm was out there, which that's a mess in its own right, the receiving core was also a mess. I mean, that was one of the worst offenses I've ever seen in watching football. The Giants towards the end of the year, and a big part of it was Toney and Galladay not quite living up to the hype, even when they were on the field.
I mean the two plays that were the QB sneaks to basically punt the ball. That's just the microcosm of the whole season, isn't it?
Uh huh.
Yeah, I mean, and then Galladay and Tony definitely had their injuries and things they've battled through, but they played 24 of a combined 32 games. It's not
Hmm.
like these guys are missing the season. They each had they had a combined less than 1,000 yards, and of course, the big one was that they had a combined 0 touchdowns. Just not a lot of explosiveness from these guys that they were hoping for. I still think there's flashes of it for both players, and I expect them to get better. But it was a rough year.
Yeah. Tony did do the rare 190 yards plus an ejection in the same game. Those are always fun. Punched a guy while getting 190 yards.
That's an impressive feat. It's
Uh-huh.
a I think that's probably never going to be broken.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, what's the record on most receiving yards in a game where you also threw a punch and got kicked out? Is that the? I think we would call it. Is that the Kadarius Toney? If you get 100 yards, have a good football game, and also get kicked out of it, or is that the Aqib Talib? Maybe he's the one who really started.
Maybe I was going to
Hmm.
say, did Antonio Brown make it, and then Kadarius Toney just perfect it?
Yeah, potentially. But at least with them, I didn't think there was a huge disappointment either because I had low expectations for all of them. Let's go to the Packers. Packers were a tough one, right? I mean, they won 13 games. Like,
Yeah.
there wasn't really a lot of negatives I had. I ended up going with Deebo Samuel as their biggest disappointment, for what he did to them, because I don't really have anything else.
uh, yeah. I mean, he killed them again. So there's really
Hmm.
nothing else to say. It's just that this is a guy that they have not been able to scheme for. And I mean, how many times have they faced him in the playoffs now? And it just seems like they have no answer for it. But it also goes back to they just seem like once again in the playoffs, the offense fell short, the offense felt stale, and Rodgers made some bad plays. Rodgers made some bad plays in this one, where I think some other playoff situations you don't blame him. I thought he deserved a lot of blame for this playoff loss. So I think there's plenty of blame to go around for that specific game, and that's kind of their season.
Yeah, that really was it, right? It was that what like I'm obviously the Debo Samuel is kind of a joke. The real if I picked one, it would really just be their offensive performance in that playoff because their defense played awesome in that game. Their defense was fantastic. It really offense and of course, I guess really now that I'm thinking about it, special teams should be the answer here. Their special teams was a disaster all year. Special teams was the biggest disappointment.
Yeah, it really was. And is Mason Crosby still with the team? There's no way, right?
I honestly, I do not, I have not, did not expect you to put me on the spot on who is the current kicker for the Green Bay Packers.
I don't know. I feel like he might be back again, and it just feels like another mistake.
Let me here. I'll look at the. Mason Crosby is currently still a kicker for the Packers, coming off a 73.5 field goal percentage. Was perfect 16 for 16 in 2020 though.
Yeah, well, maybe he'll bounce back. We'll see.
But the weird thing is, it's not like their special teams like they were missing kicks. It was like they couldn't figure out how to successfully, get a punt off.
Yeah, it was all three phases. It was punt return, kickoffs. There, just everything about it seemed abysmal this past season. I don't know what it was compared to years past.
Yeah, just baffling stuff with the Green Bay Packers. Let's move on to the Vikings. I put coaching. I didn't expect a ton, but this was still even for an old school regime, this was a very big disappointment. I thought there was stuff to be excited about. Kirk Cousins is solid. You have Justin Jefferson, you have Adam Thielen, you have Dalvin Cook, and it just kind of just felt again very stale. I thought.
I agree. I think that the younger Kubiak did not meet my expectations. I thought as far as the play caller went, I thought that Mike Zimmer was on the chopping block, and obviously he's fired because he didn't meet expectations. And I
Mhm.
mean, look, I've said this before that this could be a potential bounce back team, but if you just look at this roster last season compared to the roster of the Philadelphia Eagles and the New Orleans Saints this past season, knowing the Saints injuries that they dealt with and no Michael Thomas, there's no excuse that this team's missing the playoffs. There really just isn't. I think this team has some holes. It's not perfect, but it's better than those two teams.
Yeah, I think so as well. And again, I don't really know what else like you could really put here, right? Like Kirk Cousins, maybe like Kirk Cousins, I think was a pleasant surprise this
It was
year,
one of
not a
his best
disappointment.
seasons.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so he actually lived up to his contract this year, I think. So like, I don't know, this was a kind of a disaster by the coaching staff.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you could throw maybe you could put, Harrison Smith wasn't quite as good last season, but at the same time, like I don't think it's all his fault.
Yeah, I don't know. This was, I don't know, Patrick Peterson, but like, what we're expecting from Patrick Peterson at this age, anyways. Yeah, really, coaching is the big one there. Let's go to the Bears. Bears, really hard to figure out a disappointment because so much goes so well over there in Chicago. I decided to go with lack of Justin Fields' development. I think that to me, that's the big thing because I thought Fields showed some nice things there. Again, rookie, I'm not going to take too much into his first season unless it's awesome, which it wasn't awesome, but that's fine. I think the lack of really developing him, whether you want to blame Matt Nagy, you want to blame the general managers for not putting a team around him, it looks like that's still going to be the way that they're going to go is to not put a team around him. We'll see if that strategy pays off. But I think the lack of Justin Fields' development is the biggest disappointment out of 1 year. We didn't really get to see too much. I felt kind of really threw him into the deep end of the pool year one.
Yeah. And the things that was so interesting is that so you looked at let's take what the Jets were doing with Zach Wilson and compare it to what the Bears were doing with Justin Fields. It
Mm-hmm.
seemed like Zach Wilson made really hard throws really well, but made the easy throws that they were starting to set up for him towards the end of the season. It seemed like he struggled with that stuff, but they were at least making concerted effort to make him easy, good throws.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't seem like there was anything easy happening with the Chicago. And when you
No.
had a guy like Mooney who had a 1,000-yard season, you have a guy like Allen Robinson who's, Allen Robinson.
Mm-hmm.
It should be fairly easy to construct passing situations to at least make easy throws for him. And it just didn't seem like there was a lot of that this past season. It seemed like everything looked difficult. And you know what? Maybe it is kind of Fields at the end of the day. Maybe it's just this is who he is. He doesn't have the talent to hang in the league. But It didn't seem like the offensive system was helping it at all, and I didn't think that helped him towards the end of the season.
Yeah, listen, there wasn't a bigger Justin Fields hater out of the draft than I was. Even I would still sit here and say that, like, he belongs in the league. Like, and they're just not doing a good job of putting a team around him because he still does have talent. And so it's almost like I can't even take the victory lap of his bad season because anyone would have, Tom Brady would have looked bad in that situation.
Yeah. 16 touchdowns, 20 interceptions, and sub 7 yards per attempt out of their 3 quarterbacks last season. That is bad.
Yeah, not great there. Let's move on. Detroit Lions, another team that kind of hard to come up with one, really, because kind of everything was more of a pleasant surprise last year. Even though they didn't win many games, we didn't expect them to. I decided to go with Levi Onwuzurike, their second-round selection, who they picked 41st overall. He's someone who a lot of people were very excited about. I was very excited about. It seemed like he's someone who could have been a real sleeper out of year one, out of college, and kind of just didn't do much. I'm not going to hold too much against him because he's, interior defensive lineman. Those guys tend to take some time to develop. And like I said, the Lions didn't have too many holes to begin with, but he would end up being my pick.
Yeah, I think.
Let me clarify. I said they didn't have too many holes. They had plenty of holes, but the holes we expected to be holes. So they didn't have too many surprise bad situations.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I don't know where I would have gone with that. Maybe Tim Boyle. But at the same time, he was still below my very low expectations. I think Onwuzurike it's a fair pick, and like you said, defensive tackle, that's just going to take a little bit of time. He's going to adjust. I think he's going to get better and still be. He was a guy I was also high on in the draft. I think he's going to be a very good football player.
Yeah, still plenty of hope left. Tim Boyle is just the worst player of all time, right?
He's got to be. I mean,
him and Ben Skowronek of the Rams, the guy who kept missing plays in the playoff run. Those two guys.
He's got to have an uncle that's in the NFL or something. I just don't understand it. How does this happen? How does this guy have a job?
Yeah, he must just be awesome, right? It's like every time I think about it, you're probably just a great, people will probably just love you. You're probably just super cool.
He's great at breaking down film. He loves film.
Yeah,
just a big film junkie.
Maybe he's a good cook or something.
That could be true. He's Friday is Tim Boyle hot dog day at the Lions facility.
Yeah,
he's just grilling them up, baby. Little mustard, sauerkraut.
I like the I don't know why hot dogs was the food you chose. I feel like anyone can cook a hot dog, but the idea of oh my god, this is the best cooked hot dog I've ever had.
Hey man, some people just have the gift. You never know.
I guess so. He has the no one makes wieners like Tim Boyle, apparently. Let's move on. Let's go to my team, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'm going to someone you've mentioned in this podcast already. I am going Antonio Brown. I think Antonio Brown was the biggest disappointment. I think that I totally bought into the hype of, here we go. Antonio Brown, Tom Brady has got him under control. He will not have any of his antics happen here. Narrator voice, he had antics happen here.
Yeah, it certainly was disappointing, especially when they were relying on him. He only played 7 games, 545 yards. Obviously, the meltdown at the end of the season was the big thing too. I agree. I think it's the obvious pick, but at the same time, I thought there was a few other picks he could have gone with. There's Devin White. Obviously, there's who else? There was somebody else I was thinking about too.
Could have gone with Sue as another option, or Jason Pierre-Paul, but those are kind
of Ronald Jones, maybe. Yeah, I mean, those are a few guys.
Yeah. I mean, Sue and Pierre-Paul are two guys who we knew they were getting up there. We knew this is the possibility is that they could their careers could see a decline. I think Ronald Jones has played as Ronald Jones has always played through his entire career, and I would say the same for Devin White, really. But I still think that maybe we were hoping Devin White could continue to progress, and didn't really do that. So I considered White as well, but I figured. If Brown just stays on the field and stays a Buccaneer, there's a very real chance the Buccaneers are back-to-back Super Bowl champions.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, all right. Well, let's move on. Let's go to the New Orleans Saints. The Saints were another weird one where it's I don't really know what to put here because their real issues last year were injuries. So,
I know what to put.
Okay, well, you know one. I went with Taysom Hill. Taysom Hill was my selection. Was that your selection as well?
It was my selection.
Yeah, I mean, just for a guy who got hyped up as much as Sean Payton hyped him up. Sean Payton said that Taysom Hill was going to be the next Steve Young at one point. Taysom Hill, who I think some people forget, he started off in preseason as the starting quarterback. Winston won that job from what he did in preseason, but Taysom Hill started off getting quarterback 1 reps there. And he clearly showed that he is not a top 32 quarterback in the NFL. And all this time they invested in him, it really, I'm not saying I don't like him as a player and what he can bring to the table. It's very fascinating, but he's just not a starting quarterback.
He's not a starting quarterback, and he is not a backup quarterback, and he's probably not a third-string quarterback. So, yeah, I mean, it was bad. He only fumbled the ball 1 time last season. There's some progress.
There you go.
But, yeah, I mean, it just didn't look like he was prepared to be the kind of guy that should start for a team. And like you said, they've invested a lot of money in him. They've invested a lot of money in this guy being good, and it just didn't work out. Winston looks like he's going to get that job, and we'll see how he does. But yeah, I mean, Hill is definitely not the guy going forward, I don't think.
Yeah, again, Hill can still do some nice things, right? Can still be a good tight end. He can still come in on certain packages and be the sort of almost like a wild cat type quarterback, but can still throw all that fun stuff. But the might not be the next Steve Young.
No, it doesn't seem that way, and it's okay. It's okay. This is kind of what we expected out of him in the end. But yeah, it was just too much hype for him, and it clearly didn't work out. They're still trying to figure out this post-Breeze era.
Yeah, it should be interesting. We'll see how Winston does next year. The Atlanta Falcons, they're another one of those weird teams where it's like, I don't know, you actually kind of exceeded expectations. Like, I think the Falcons were kind of like a fringe playoff team last year for a decent chunk of it. I think that was kind of like one of those weird, like, I forgot about the Falcons maybe making the playoffs arc that happened in the 2021 season. That was like a weird thing that happened. I went with Richie Grant, again, 40th overall pick, who didn't do much. But it's like, I don't know, like, who else could you have, like, what else do you pick here?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. I guess, you could say Calvin Ridley. I mean, I don't know, like, how you would approach that, because obviously he stepped away from the game. That was someone they probably really needed on offense. You could have also gone Mike Davis, I guess, too. But at the same time, what were your expectations for Mike Davis? I did think Grant was going to be good. He didn't look very good in year 1. Let's hope he bounces back, because they're going to need him to be good, especially for that secondary to get any better.
Yeah, Mike Davis isn't a bad selection. I also considered putting Matt Ryan here. Like, not that he was like the reason the Falcons were a mess or anything, but this year did kind of feel like, okay, Matt Ryan is not not what he once was. Can still play, might be a little bit less of a player than we thought he was.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
All right, let's round out the NFC South with the Panthers, who, unlike some of these other teams, the Panthers actually had expectations heading into the season. I mean, people were talking about them as a dark horse playoff contender. And it was going to be led. What's that?
I said not me.
Yeah, no, we weren't, but people were saying that. I thought about Sam Darnold here, but again, I was not expecting much from Sam Darnold. We were not expecting much from Sam Darnold. I was expecting more from the weapons. I mean, this ended up being like, we thought this was going to be a good, like, offense, at least good weapons around Sam Darnold. We knew the offensive line would suck, but like, these weapons didn't really step up. Part of that was injury, but you're always going to have injury at that position. And they really, I mean, they were, I think at one point, like, past the halfway point, they were the 32nd ranked receiving core in football. Like, this was not the receiving core that you were expecting it to be.
Yeah, with, McCaffrey obviously getting hurt was a big thing. And it just seemed like he's almost like, the metrics with McCaffrey are almost like Steph Curry-like, where it's like when he's not on the floor, when he's not on the field, everyone else is just a little bit shittier, And it just seems like everyone on the Panthers is just a little bit worse when Christian McCaffrey isn't out there taking attention, taking up, it's almost like that gravity situation with Steph. When McCaffrey's on the swing pass, everyone's running out to the swing pass because they're waiting for McCaffrey to get the ball. I'm seeing more and more stats about, DJ Moore's yardage compared to everybody else in the league. I did not think DJ Moore was that good last season. I've been on that point. I agree, though. I thought, I didn't think he was as good. I didn't think Robbie Anderson was as good as they were expecting. There's no third option to be heard of.
Terrence Marshall did nothing. Like, Terrence Marshall was considered like a fringe top 5 wide receiver at the draft class last year, and he was on no show.
Yeah, he was viewed as a steal. And I mean, all of that combined into this team probably having the worst quarterback play last season. I mean, we just made fun of Tim Boyle. Cam Newton was arguably way worse than Tim Boyle last year.
I don't know if I would argue anyone was way worse than Tim Boyle.
Or at least worse than Tim Boyle.
Sure. Yeah. Again. Yeah. There was some tough stuff with the Panthers quarterback play. And what the quarterback play was so bad that when Sam Darnold came in, it like you actually felt like, oh, okay, this looks better.
This is stabilizing things.
Yeah.
This is righting the ship. Yeah, I mean this was a bad situation for Carolina, and I hope we can get some healthy McCaffrey seasons because I do think he makes a huge effect on this team. He played 7 games and was 3rd on this team in receiving.
Absurd. Yeah, and the good thing about this,
do you know who was 4th in receiving?
I do not. Well, who is 4th in receiving?
Amir Abdullah.
Okay, would not have guessed that. You could have given me 100 guesses. I don't think I would have got there.
Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah,
that's a really bad offense.
Right. The good news though is that after a running back gets injured, they typically bounce back and are healthy in following seasons.
Yeah, exactly. Expect him to win comeback player of the year.
Yeah, that typically works out. Move on to the Rams. Again, not too many disappointing things about the Rams. They won the Super Bowl. How can you have any, whatever your most disappointment is in this season, you're still going to feel pretty good about it. I went Tutu Atwell. Seemed like kind of a weird move at the time, and like even now it looks kind of weird. It was their first selection, not a first-round pick because they don't like first-round picks. But again, who cares? You won the Super Bowl. That's the biggest disappointment.
It's disappointing, but at the same time, like this guy didn't even record a. Oh wait, no. Here's a stat. Okay, he had returning yards.
There you go.
He had 87 returning yards and 54 punt return yards. So he barely had 100 yards. He barely had 130 yards for the whole season in anything.
Mm-hmm.
Like he was out there for cardio, basically.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Again, it was kind of a weird move. I mean, you drafted someone who's very small to begin with, and it kind of just seemed like they just didn't feel like he was had the size to fit your team. But again. I like that the Rams do that. I like that the Rams take chances on guys like that. I just felt like, maybe would like that one back.
Yeah, when you have Kupp, Van Jefferson, Tyler Higbee, Robert Woods, and then add Odell Beckham and Deshaun Jackson, I think you're allowed to, take a couple chances there.
Yeah, I think so as well. Let's move on. Arizona Cardinals. I went with second half of the season, Cliff Kingsbury. Because Kingsbury, I was so impressed with what he did the first half of the season, and then things just completely fell off the rails in the second half. Part of that was the Hopkins injury, but Hopkins, there's a point when Hopkins and Kyler Murray were out earlier on in the season, and they still won a game, and still looked solid in that stretch. And then it was later in the season, when Hopkins went out again, they just had nothing to do. So the second half, Cliff Kingsbury stuff was not great.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is the right move, and I guess you could put AJ Green, but I didn't really, outside of that one blunder where he wasn't even looking on the touchdown play, based on what his expectations were, I didn't think he was that bad last season.
I thought he was actually he was better last year than he was the year before. I thought his last year in Cincinnati.
Yeah, so I mean, I do think it has to be Cliff at that point. It was a rough year. Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that this team has something to figure out, and it's not good when your coach has low expectations of being terrible in the second half of seasons, and your quarterback is also 5'8" and seems like he takes a lot of hits. That seems like a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, might not be great, but again, there's stuff to like about the Cardinals as well. The Seattle Seahawks, I went with Jamal Adams. Jamal Adams is just Jamal Adams is not a bad football player. People keep making fun of the trade. When the trade happened, that actually most people felt I can see the logic behind that. He's been used poorly to begin with. He hasn't been a good player with the Seattle Seahawks, which is just not what he was. He was legitimately largely considered the best safety in football when he got traded for, and has been nowhere near that since he's been wearing a Seattle uniform.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I think he's not a bad football player, but he was bad last season. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I think he'll get better. I don't know. The Seahawks defense just seems like it needs a reboot. Doesn't it just seems like it needs to hit a restart button and kind of figure this out again? Because outside of its run defense, it doesn't work.
Yeah. Or maybe they could just get a star quarterback to kind of mask some of those concerns.
Yeah. If only you had one. I mean, they got Drew Lock, so we'll see.
Yeah, you're right. They have Drew Lock. What am I talking about?
Yeah. I don't know. It just seems like this entire defense needs a reboot.
Yeah, I see. Very smug in the chat says Adams was only good for blitzing. Like, I mean, Adams was good for what he did in the Todd Bowles scheme. He needs to be used in that style, like a guy who stops the run, a guy who blitzes, and can play coverage against tight ends, right? Like you don't have him playing against wide receivers.
Yeah. Yeah, that seems like a mistake. So I
Mhm.
don't know. I think the Seahawks have to figure this out, but doesn't seem like it's working out for them right now. And of course, they're going to change nothing except for get rid of their best player.
Right. Trust in the Pete Carroll plan. Uh, Final pick that I have, the 49ers. I went with Trey Lance, right? You spent 3 first-round picks on a
Yeah.
guy in Trey Lance, and he didn't even play for you. So, or he played a little bit, and came in when Jimmy Garoppolo had his annual couple of injuries. But I thought that for the most part, Trey Lance was like, I mean, it was fine when he was there, but like the fact that Trey Lance, even today, you still have Jimmy Garoppolo on the roster, that's concerning. Like the fact that you were in the NFC Championship game and had a high first-round pick the year before and didn't use it on anything that helped you potentially win the Super Bowl last year. The Trey Lance pick, not to say that it can't work out, but through where we are now has been a disappointment from what we thought it could be with a 3rd overall pick.
Yeah, I mean, this is a disaster, right? And this is one of those things where everyone was going crazy because the rumor was they want Mac Jones.
Mm-hmm.
Mac Jones probably would have been a good pick at number 3.
Oh yeah, they might. I mean, he would have been a significant upgrade at the quarterback position for a team that went to the NFC Championship game.
Yeah, it seems like it's a bad situation right now, and it seems like it's a bad pick. And I mean, I've said this on the podcast before. I think Jimmy Garoppolo starts next season. Whether he finishes next season, we'll see. But I think he's going to start next season. So I think it's a bad situation for San Francisco. It's a bad pick, and I don't think it's going to work out for them right now.
Yeah. Oh man. I mean, what? And then next off season, when we're still like, are they going to get rid of Jimmy Garoppolo? What's going to happen? This could last
Well, he's
a
a
while.
free agent next year, right?
I believe so. But yeah, you can resign him.
Yeah, that's true.
Mm-hmm. All right, that is the NFC, Kyle. I now will give you the floor. I almost said pass the floor to you. I don't think that's how that works. Give you the floor I'm not sure where you're starting, but I had the banner set up. Where are you going to start with in the AFC?
I was going to AFC East. I was going to start with the Buffalo Bills. So going with the Bills, I had a few different players that I had in mind. I was thinking you could put Trey White in this conversation. He did get hurt, but he still played 11 games and was slightly worse than he has been in the years past.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, I still thought their defense was good. I thought about putting Zach Moss just because he didn't really take control of the running back situation at all. But I ended up going with Emmanuel Sanders, who was their free agent signing, supposed to cure this number 2 receiver problem. He did not cure the number 2, number 3 receiver problem. And they're kind of back to square one with that, where Beasley looked a little bit worse, Sanders looked a little bit worse, and they don't really have a second receiver outside of, I guess you could put Gabriel Davis in that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really think he's a true number 2. I mean, I think that's one of the biggest holes for Buffalo right now. I'm still not overly concerned, but it is a hole.
Yeah, I mean, listen, obviously Gabriel Davis had that great playoff game. I thought Gabriel Davis looked good once he finally got into that position, but I feel like they just spent a long time putting him in that position, like you said, trying to make that work. Again, a team that didn't have a ton of disappointing things. The only other thing I could think about would be, could you stick maybe some of Josh Allen's bad games, right? Like losing to the Jaguars. Like that's a disappointment.
Yeah, I mean, it could be the situation too. And obviously the big thing would have been, I don't know, like I still thought they ended up at the pretty good record. So it's not like you can fault it too much, but at the same time, you're looking at situations where that Kansas City game could have been a home game. That
Mm-hmm.
in situations like that, I think could have gone a long way for this team. So overall, like there's a few things you could have went with, but I do feel like that I was just looking at it like, man, they wanted this guy to be so much better than who he was, and they just didn't have it from him.
Yeah. Only other thing I could think about would be the coin landing on tails.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or, the final 13 seconds of that game against Kansas City in the regulation. That could be something too.
Right. Let's move on. What do you have next?
Patriots. Let's go to New England Patriots. This one felt fairly obvious to me. Big money play was Jonnu Smith. They wanted this 2 tight end set. One of those tight ends, Hunter Henry, was pretty good last season. The other tight end, Jonnu Smith, was not up to par. He took a significant step back as far as his overall production went. He was sixth on the team in receiving this season, just ahead of N'Keal Harry. Only had one touchdown reception and was behind Brandon Bolden as far as receiving yards go. So that's not going to cut it. This was just a bad performance for him, and hopefully he bounces back and provides a little more for the team this season. But he was a big money player that hasn't performed up to that standard.
Yeah, that's a good one. I think I agree. I think you could also could you maybe throw in Nelson Aguilar there as well?
Yeah, but at the same time, like, I don't know what my expectations were for Aguilar. I thought, like, he could have been a little bit better, but at the same time, I think they paid Jonnu Smith more, and he has more
Hmm.
guaranteed dollars, and he was worse than him. So I feel like it has to be Smith over Aguilar in that regard. Um, Outside of that, I mean, there wasn't really a whole lot to be that disappointed in. I guess you could say like Dante Hightower too could be another guy, but there had to be a point where we expect that he gets a little bit worse and kind of falls off the cliff, if you will, because he looked like a worse and older player basically at this point.
Yeah, I think so as well. Yeah, I mean, again, and that's kind of the life of signing free agents. They don't always work out.
Yep. So we'll see how it goes this year for Smith. I could see him bouncing back and having a better year, but they need it for him, basically, is what they need. Let's go to the Miami Dolphins. Miami Dolphins, I think there's a few other. This was another team where it's like, okay, I could go through a few different spots here, even though I think they had a largely fairly good season. Um, I thought about putting the offensive line, but this was projected as the 29th best offensive line in football, and then the 32nd best offensive line in football, which is worse, by the way.
Hmm.
So you could probably look at that and say, okay, that's a no expectations for that group. I'm gonna go with Tua on the last game of the season. I just think that that last game of the season was basically for the playoffs for the season, and he didn't perform to expectations in that game. Um, and once again, we're in this boat where is Tua on the hot seat? I think he's going to get better. He showed progression, but that last game didn't help his case.
How dare you, sir? How dare you say anything negative about the future greatest of all time?
Tua on's coming for me now.
Yeah. No, I think that's fair. Again, a lot of what they did kind of. I think there was a lot of pleasant surprises with them. Like I thought, like Jalen Waddle doing what he did,
Yeah.
like that was good. So I think it's fair to say I think they overperformed my expectations, although they underperformed the consensus's expectations.
Yeah, I mean, they overperformed my expectations too. I didn't think they were that good of a football team, and they ended up a game out of a playoff spot. So nothing really you could fault them with that. It's just, didn't win that last game, and a lot of it was because he made bad throws.
Yeah, I agree. What about the Jets?
This one once again felt pretty obvious to me. I went with Corey Davis. They really needed a number one receiver, man. They needed a number one receiver
Hmm.
badly. Corey Davis ended up only playing 9 games, had 492 yards and 4 touchdowns. Plus, he fumbled the ball twice too. So just not a good performance for him overall. And someone they paid money to be that guy, and he wasn't even close to it.
To me, this one's obvious as well, but I have someone different. Like, isn't Zach Wilson the obvious answer here? I mean, like we had such high expectations for him, and like, he showed some flashes, but this was, I think, a disappointing rookie year from him.
It could be, but at the same time, we just went through 4 quarterbacks and said they were all kind of bad for rookies.
Uh
So
huh.
maybe we see some growth. I think that the Justin Herberts of the world have kind of, blinded us to how hard it is to play this position.
Sure.
So I think that this gets better. It could get better, and maybe you are disappointed after year one, but at the same time, I still thought there was some flashes and room to grow. And I just think he had zero receiver help. He had a rookie as his number one receiver.
Yeah. No, that's fair. And I did expect, again, Corey Davis. Expecting him to be a number one receiver probably was going to be a bit too much of a task as well. But he didn't even look like the good role player that he was in Tennessee the last year. He was 1,000-yard receiver before he came over.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, this was someone that they had huge. This looked like a big move to try and at least raise the floor of this group, and it just didn't even raise the floor. It just kind of bottomed out.
Yeah, I think that's fair. We're going through the Bengals next.
Yeah, we can go with the Bengals here. This is once again another team that had exceeded expectations in almost every facet, so it's hard to pick just one player for that.
Right.
Um, or even one thing that was disappointing because they made the Super Bowl.
Hmm.
I ended up going with I don't know if this is surprising. Like Jesse Bates wasn't like as good as he has been. I think that's the one criticism I had. Like I still think he's a pretty good safety, but he went from being one of the best cover safeties in football to kind of just being like all right. And I
Hmm.
think they needed one of the best cover safeties in football this season. You could also go to the offensive line, but this is another group that I didn't think had another like a lot of like desires. This didn't have a lot of expectations on the offensive line of being good. And I actually thought for most of the regular season they held up enough.
Hmm.
So I went with Bates on this one.
Yeah, that's not a bad pick. And again, it's not to say that he was bad or anything like that, but it's again, you're looking through like the list of their depth chart from last year, and it's like who underperformed expectations, and there wasn't a lot. Again, someone posted like One Nation Underground said losing Reef, which that's probably fair. Like losing Riley Reef was a just him getting injured that made their offensive line look worse. Like, are you going to put an injury there? I don't know about that. So yeah, it's probably fair, but again, it's not a. I think we're to be clear, I don't think you're saying like he was bad or anything like that. It was just like we expected him to be awesome, and he was only good.
Yeah, exactly. So I do think he bounces back, and I think that he's going to be fine back there. This is still a pretty good secondary too, so it's not a huge problem. And I think the offensive line obviously gets better. But yeah, that was my biggest disappointment, just not seeing him as one of the best guys in the league.
Yeah. All right, let's move on.
All right, let's go Steelers, who finished second in the AFC North. I went with this is kind of similar to your Jamal Adams point. I went Minka Fitzpatrick.
Uh huh.
Uh, this is a bad defense around him, but he sucked. He was
Yeah.
really bad.
Hmm.
And this is a situation where this is not a bad football player, but he couldn't cover all of a sudden. He couldn't stop the run all of a sudden. And it was basically a similar situation where he was basically used as a box safety who couldn't really do all that much. So it was just a disappointing year for him all around. And it was perplexing to watch.
Yeah, it was. He made a lot of mental mistakes. I thought, especially early on in the year, that kind of was really what hurt him. I thought he gave up some big plays. So he still has the talent, but safeties are weird. Safeties are weird. It's hard. Like so Eddie Jackson had put together one of the best safety seasons of all time, and then like could not play after that. And still hasn't done much. Like safeties are just a difficult position. It seems like there's a lot of flukiness there, and I think some of it might be just the talent around you. Like we've seen Fitzpatrick play well with in a Dolphins team that had no talent around him. So just kind of weird.
Yeah. Yeah, it is weird, but at the same time, like would it be so shocking if he's completely awesome again next season?
No.
Probably not. It just seemed like
Hmm.
that there was I mean, look at his top corners were basically what? Uh Cameron Sutton? Is that his number one corner on his side? So I mean, maybe, he's taking too many chances because he has bad guys at the corner positions, but at the same time, it just it was a bad season for him overall. And I do expect him to be better, but it was just poor.
Yeah, I think so. I think I agree with that. Let's go to the Browns.
Yep. Cleveland Browns, once again, this has to be Baker Mayfield. Was he hurt? Yes. Is it fair to, judge him fully on the injury? Probably not. But at the same time, this was a make or break season for him, and it broke. This was a bad year. They went out and spent big money on a quarterback because they felt like they wanted to upgrade this position permanently. And yeah, he struggled. He had barely 60% completion percentage and was just poor week in and week out. And Chase Odell Beckham out of town. And obviously, Odell Beckham proved that he's still a pretty good receiver. So I'm going with Baker here.
Yeah, Landry's gone now as well. So very, things very much shifting. I think the Browns are, maybe in a better position because of it, at least in terms of on the football field stuff. And Mayfield, who is still on the Cleveland Browns team, by the way. That's the other weird factor here. Is still
Yeah.
technically a Cleveland Brown. How funny would it be if? I mean, listen, he might end up playing. Probably will end up playing some. So that's another interesting thing here. But I mean, yeah, I'm with you all the way, really, with Mayfield. It's kind of the obvious answer. It's like how could you even argue anyone else other than maybe like some disappointment in the receiving core, some disappointing in Kevin Stefanski. But the reason why this team, if they had Baker Mayfield of 2 years ago, would have at least made the playoffs this year.
Yeah. And it wasn't like I didn't think their receiving core was that good, but at the same time, there was guys open that he just wasn't hitting. So I think
Right.
that played a huge part in it too. I just think I thought it was a poor performance, and they had the right to move on, and they did.
Yeah, and mental mistakes as well. There was plenty of issues there. The Baltimore Ravens.
All right, Baltimore Ravens to wrap up the AFC North. This was another one where it was kind of hard just because, you could put injuries as the biggest disappointment because there were so many guys who ended up out.
Hmm.
I didn't want to do that completely because I didn't think that was fair. I kind of went with Patrick Queen here, my bread and butter, which is criticizing Patrick Queen.
Uh huh.
Um, Listen, I mean, this is kind of back to my point where the tackle as a statistic is kind of BS. And if you just read who has the most tackles in the NFL, it's sort of deceiving. I didn't think Patrick Reed was good or Patrick Queen was good again this season. He can't cover. He doesn't really defend the line of scrimmage all that well. He blitzes all right. I guess that's something he has go for him, which is probably the easiest thing for a linebacker to do. But
Hmm.
he looks lost out there at times at the middle linebacker spot. They moved him outside a little bit, and it was a little better. But at the same time, you're drafting him to be that guy in the middle, and he looks terrible at the spot for 2 years in a row now. That's a big pick.
Hey, that is a vote getter of Defensive Rookie of the Year 2 years ago, Kyle.
Still one of the worst decisions I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, somehow someone really watched him play and said he is the best defensive player here, defensive rookie here.
Yeah, and it wasn't even like a weak rookie class for defensive players either. It wasn't
Yeah,
like it was this year.
yeah. I think like Chase Young was it? No, it was 2 years. So who was it? I'm
Chase
trying to remember.
Young, Antoine Winfield,
Right, that's right. But Patrick Queen, he's the guy.
Patrick Queen, man. Yeah, I mean, just another rough year for him. I hope he gets better and figures this out. It can take a little bit of time for a linebacker, but they're asking him to do a lot, and he's not able to do it.
Yeah, really, again, has not. Is he a great answer of like if you are drafted high up, people are just gonna people are just gonna make any excuse for you. Out of 95 eligible linebackers, he was 78th in terms of Pro Football Focus rating last year.
Uh, yeah, I mean, he's going to get every chance to try and succeed. It just doesn't
Hmm.
seem like he will. As
Yeah.
Cash Lord Raider said, Ravens still got no wide receiver. I thought about putting the wide receiver spot in this area, but at the same time, like, can I really fault Hollywood Brown for his first 1,000-yard season?
Hmm.
Like, I
Yeah.
mean, I didn't think he was great, but at the same time, he was better than he has been in years past.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And again, for a lot of the Ravens issues, it was just like they just sort of got injured. Like it's hard to put that much against them.
Yeah. So, all right. So that wraps up the the AFC North, excuse me. So let's go to the AFC South with the Tennessee Titans. This one's obvious, right?
The obvious answer would be that they have not changed their uniforms to a more intimidating color.
You're not a fan of baby blue at all, are you?
It's horrible. And by the way, all this North Carolina stuff works for basketball. Not a fan of it in football.
I
That
don't
might be my
know.
hottest take.
What color should they be?
I don't know. Like, I guess like I think dark blue works. I like the Seahawks uniforms.
Well, they're mostly dark blue now.
I guess so, but it's still too light. It's also funny because it's the exact same color that I use on my banners. So I literally use the exact same color that I'm now criticizing.
Yeah, nobody thinks this is an intimidating show. That's the
That's
problem.
true. That's true.
Um,
We need to get more intimidating. Find a better color.
yeah, I went with Julio Jones here. Um, it seemed like a massive upgrade to let Corey Davis walk. Oh boy,
There we go. Got the
look at
got the
that.
more intimidating banner there.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it seemed like a massive upgrade to let Corey Davis walk and bring in Julio Jones, and it was not an upgrade at all. In fact, it was Corey Davis was my biggest disappointment for the Jets. Julio Jones was worse than Corey Davis last season. So, I think that speaks volumes to how bad he was and how bad that situation was. Obviously, the injuries hurt, but at the same time, when he was on the field, it just seemed like there wasn't a lot of effectiveness from him. Disappointing year for Julio.
Yeah, no, that's very fair. I mean, I guess you could maybe say Derrick Henry after coming back from injury wasn't spectacular, but like I'm totally on your side. I think that I thought Julio was going to be awesome. I was like, oh, these dumb teams that didn't trade for Julio Jones, and then he just wasn't great.
Yeah. I mean, I completely agree, and it just didn't seem like it worked out. They took a chance on it. Now they got Robert Woods. Robert Woods should be better, or maybe the position's just cursed now. So we'll see.
Yeah, we will see. Let's move on. Indianapolis Colts.
Colts. A couple different options I had here for this one. I thought about putting Xavier Rhodes, but at the same time, I guess the question is Xavier Rhodes, did he just outperform expectations so much the season before that it was hard to replicate?
Uh-huh.
Um, so I think it's more of that. I'm going back to the spot here, which is just the lack of number 2 wide receiver options. Um, you have one guy who's a 1,000-yard receiver who, I mean, I think Michael Pittman might be the worst 1,000-yard receiver in the NFL, if we're honest. And then
Hmm.
the second option behind him, Zach Pascal, had 384 yards receiving.
It's crazy.
Um,
Hmm.
that's not good. T.Y. Hilton was the guy they brought in to kind of be that sort of player, and he was not that sort of player. And obviously, can't stay healthy. That's kind of been his MO for a few years now. And then you're looking at guys like Mo Wiley Cox, Naheem Hines, Jack Doyle. None of those guys seem to work. They didn't have that option. They still kind of need that second receiver option, but it's been a problem trying to fill that void.
Did you consider Carson Wentz here at all, or no?
No, I thought
Hmm.
he actually outperformed my expectations for him.
Yeah, I think I agree. Let's move on. How about the Texans?
Texans, no expectations for this team at all.
Hmm.
It has to be Deshaun Watson though. This whole situation, the fact that he didn't get to play a game at all for this team, the fact that this kind of just blew up in their face, and I mean, it, I this whole situation has set this franchise back. I feel like years. It's going to be years before this team's competitive again. Obviously, getting the draft capital I think helps, but when's the next time you expect the Texans to be a decent football team? Just right now, thinking about it, I think it's got to be at least 3 to 4 years.
Yeah, you're looking at. I mean, I think the way it works is you tank this year, get a good quarterback, maybe someone who could, perhaps even outperform the elite Davis Mills, and then in the following draft, and then you hope that you can build it from there.
Uh, yeah, I mean, I think that's the hope, but at the same time, like you don't even have like real head coaching candidates that want this job. Like Lovie
Right.
Smith wants this job. I don't.
Right.
I don't know. It just seems like a horrible situation. This looks like one of the worst situations in football. So I think it has to be Watson and just how this kind of created an entire franchise.
Yeah. Paul Cole says what it's Laramie Tunsil. Tunsil was the guy I thought of as well, who didn't play much this year, got hurt week 5, but it wasn't spectacular when he was out there as well. I think if you're gonna, because I get to the Deshaun Watson stuff, but if you're gonna say that was before this year, Tunsil might be the other guy.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. He wasn't very great. But yeah, I mean, outside of that, like nobody else literally had any expectations, so it would have been hard to pick anybody else. Like
Hmm.
Danny Amendola. What did you think of his season for the Texans?
Yeah, was very disappointed.
Very disappointed in Amendola.
The things I threw at the wall watching him play because he was not living up to
Uh,
my expectations.
Listen, they got Danny Amendola for the playoffs, and unfortunately, he didn't come close. So
Yeah, didn't quite make it. Another team didn't quite make it. Jacksonville Jaguars, another team who we expected nothing and we're still disappointed by. So there's plenty of, I think, material here. Where are you going?
Uh, this has to be Urban Meyer. This is the biggest disappointment of any team in any franchise, right?
Uh
Like
huh.
this was just horrible. Everything that could have gone wrong did go wrong for this situation. He did not look like he was ready to be an NFL head coach. All of this kind of went out the window, and this basically was restarting. I feel like this team just didn't do anything for a year. It would have been better than what happened this past season. If they didn't play, they could have forfeited every game and just not hired a head coach. It would have been better than what happened to the Jaguars last season.
Yeah, it was not great. This was not a fantastic performance by Urban Meyer.
I concur. That was not good.
Yeah, I mean, again, we could list all the stuff. We don't have an hour. We've already 55 minutes in, so we can't go to. But I mean, the nice thing with the Jaguars is they've been killing it this offseason. So at least can feel good about that.
Just on fire. Unbelievable stuff.
Oh man, Jacksonville's the best, isn't it?
I mean, Jacksonville exists so that we feel better about our teams when they struggle.
Yeah, I remember when I worked at the deli, Kyle. You and I both have at certain points worked at a Publix deli. Uh, I was the I always liked it when there was terrible workers because it meant that I was always going to look better. I feel like that's the Jacksonville Jaguars. You know that the other owners and GMs are love that the Jaguars exist.
Uh, yeah, I mean, I think I agree. I think, like I said, even fans have to be excited they exist. You can't get that mad as your team when there's a team down south with literally zero fans that is just not doing anything productive. I mean, this is going to be a train wreck again.
Yeah, I think that especially Lions fans got to really like the Jaguars.
Yeah, you can't call the Lions the worst fan base in football franchise in football because the Jaguars exist.
Yeah, certainly not the worst fan base.
No, they're definitely not that. They're good
Yeah,
fans. That's
right.
actually a great fan base.
Yeah, it was one of the best. Let's move on. And also, I want to say too, I feel like every time a team sucks, people say, "Oh, the fans are great." Like it's actually true with the Lions.
Yeah, I agree. I love Lions fans.
Hmm.
Not all fan bases are good. That's definitely not true. There are some combative fan bases, even when their team's bad. Lions are great.
Yeah, and luckily we come from two fan bases with the Bucs and Patriots that are also known for being great.
Everyone loves Boston fans. That's what I've
Yeah,
heard. That's the reviews I've heard. Boston sports fans are the best.
my maybe hot take is I actually think Boston sports fans are really good. It's just that like the 1% of douchebags like make it seem way worse.
Oh yeah, those guys stink. But at
Uh
the same time, it's okay. They all work for Barstool now or something like that.
huh. Right. Yeah, that's true. Literally all of them. Every single one works for Barstool Sports. So go check them out over there. Final division, Kansas City Chiefs. What was their biggest disappointment?
A couple candidates here. I thought about Frank Clark, but we had him last year, I think, so I can't do Frank Clark again.
Okay.
Um, I felt like that wasn't fair.
Hmm.
Let's see. Eric Bieniemy because they couldn't attack a cover two defense all season, but at the same time they still had pretty good offensive numbers. I
Hmm.
ended up going with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Uh, he was bad. He was pretty bad again this past season, and this was a guy that kind of a waste of a first round pick. If you ask me, they could have added a defensive end to replace Frank Clark if they ended up going in that direction. Because I believe Joe Tryon was right after him, wasn't he, or was he right before him? Either way, just seemed like a bad pick in the beginning, and it still looks like a bad pick.
Are you saying Joe Tryon or my
Am
who
I?
are you?
I think I have my years mixed up right now.
Yeah, he
But
was the follow. He was
yeah,
same 32nd overall the following year. That's right. Yeah, I mean they basically did the Mitchell Trubisky, Patrick Mahomes thing, but with running backs, right? Getting Clyde Edwards-Helaire ahead of Jonathan Taylor, but it's like it's running back, so who cares?
and the thing is too is that was crazy is that everybody had this isn't like they took the right guy and it didn't work out. Everybody had Swift and Taylor as better running backs than Edwards-Helaire, and they were
Right.
like, "Oh, this fits our scheme," and maybe just take good players next time. That's a good idea.
Yeah, or maybe it's maybe not running back in round one.
Yeah, that too. That also
Hmm.
would help. But I mean, if
I
this team had Jonathan Taylor, I'd be
right.
okay with it.
Right. But here's another one I thought of. What about Patrick Mahomes? I think he was a disappointment this year. Like I don't think Mahomes was not the best quarterback in football this year. Any year he's not the best quarterback in football, it's a disappointing year.
uh, yeah, I mean, I think that's a little fair. That's insane expectations, but at the same time,
But was he a top 10 quarterback in football in the regular season this year?
uh,
Maybe, but
yeah,
like
I still think
if
he
it,
was.
I mean, again, we can go through it, but like I think by numbers, I believe he was like 15th in PFF grade, and like 17th in like passer rating. Like that's not what I'm expecting from Mahomes. Now, again, he turned up in the playoffs and everything was fine, but until the second half against Cincinnati. But like the cover two thing, and I guess my pick would be how they reacted to cover two defenses and sort of their lack of being able to react to cover two defenses.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Um, Everyone in the chat saying cornerbacks right now. I kind of disagree. I don't know. I think the cornerback thing was a little overblown. I thought Ward was really good. I thought Fenton was really good, and I thought Mike Hughes was really good. Um, I think I disagree with that one. I think it was more the offense looked stale. Obviously, the cornerbacks in the game against the Bengals look bad. but I think Jamar Chase made everybody look bad.
Yeah. Maybe Daniel Sorensen, another honorable mention.
Yeah, that's fair. He's someone who probably could have been put on the list.
Yeah. All right. We have a lot of choices for Kansas City, but when you have high expectations, a lot of guys can fail to meet those. Let's go to the Raiders. We made Raiders fans sit around for a while. Where are you going here?
Two candidates for me. I'll throw these off of you. See what you think. Kenyon Drake, which I believe they called during the offseason the dumbest contract I've ever seen. Kenyon Drake is a candidate, and Henry Ruggs is obviously a candidate for what happened there. I'll throw it to you. Which of those two do you think should be the number one pick here for biggest disappointment on the Raiders?
Ooh, part of me also wanted to go with Damon Arnett, as he was, I believe, the thumbnail for last year's video of this. I think, I don't know what we expected from Kenyon Drake. Maybe you could even say Josh Jacobs, but I still think he's fine. It's just he can't do much. To me, the obvious answer, can I go off the board here? I think the obvious answer is Alex Leatherwood, right? Like, not that Leatherwood was expected to be great anyways. He was overdrafted, but he was still like a top 50 prospect most people had, who did not play well once he came into the league.
Could you just put every Raiders draft pick for like the last 3 years in the first round? I should say first round, because
Right.
obviously the lower level guys where they actually get their players. But you could just basically pick every Raiders first round pick of the last few years.
Yeah, you probably could. Isaac Lee said his pick would be the 2020 draft class. It's just that alone is the biggest disappointment. I mean, it's unbelievable.
It's
that this
comical.
team. Yeah, and this team has still been relatively competitive despite missing on all of these first round picks.
Relatively competitive. This was a playoff team that almost beat the team that made the Super Bowl.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. No. Absolutely.
Jacobs seems like he's not going to get a fifth year, or beyond his 5-year contract.
Well, they didn't pick up the fifth year.
Yeah, exactly. So he's not going to get beyond that. Henry Ruggs is not going to play football for a long time. Damon Arnett's probably never going to play football again.
Cleveland Ferrell, who was picked 4th overall.
Yeah. Who else? You mentioned Leatherwood being probably the worst tackle in the league, or guard, wherever you want to play him. He's still bad at it. Jonathan Abram. We've done our Jonathan Abram point. We don't have to keep doing that.
I mean, Alex Leatherwood was drafted 17th overall, and like after week 2, they're like, "Well, this isn't working." Like they gave up on it that quickly.
Yeah, that was a horrible pick. That was really bad, and it's another one of those Raiders picks where you're like, "What?" Like at least the Ruggs pick, you're like, "Okay, Ruggs makes some sense." Every other pick was like, "What are you doing?" And none of them will work. So very, very peculiar offseason or very peculiar draft coverage for the Raiders. I think they need a new scouting department.
And what's hilarious too is like every time they do that, it seems like they draft someone. Again, I know we're not breaking new ground of the Raiders have struggled with drafting in the first round, but like every time that they pick someone, it's like Cleveland Ferrell. Okay, that was a way overdraft. He was still considered by most to be like a first round talent, and then like it's like a bench player now. Like Jonathan Abram was still considered a pretty good talent. Like Alex Leatherwood was still considered like at least a second round talent. Damon Arnett was still considered a mid second round talent. All these guys were still like they've somehow not only underperformed the Raiders overdrafting them, they've underperformed where everyone expected them to be on top of that.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a weird situation. That being said, this team's still good enough to make the playoffs, which is just crazy.
And they added Devontae Adams.
Yeah, and the best case scenario is they just don't draft with the first round for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, good selection there. Good choice by them. The Chargers. What was their biggest disappointment?
You could go with the run defense, but I just think they didn't have the players to, really do anything. I ended up going with Jared Cook, and to a bigger extent, the third wide receiver option, just because they didn't really have an option. So it just seemed like it was a bad decision, and they let Henry walk with the thought that Cook was going to plug in and be that guy, and Cook was just not that level of player. So, I mean, I think it's got to be Cook at that point.
Yeah, I agree. Again, it seems like Jared Cook has been good. Like he's played for every single team in football now. They've now replaced him with Gerald Everett, so even they said that didn't work out too well. But again, a team that I'm looking through the list as well. I don't have too many. You didn't live up to the hype.
Yeah. It seemed like the guys who were good for this team, and the guys who were bad were supposed to be bad were really bad for this team, and that's what held this team back.
Yeah. Some people think Chargers coach going for it on fourth down on their own 20 against us. I still like the move. I think it's smart.
You know,
I'll die on that
I don't
hill.
agree with all of them, but at the same time, like I'm not going to say he's the most disappointing part of this season. Like they were still playing for a playoff spot on week 17.
Yeah, and I would still stand by. Like again, it helped them more than it hurt them over the course of the season.
Yeah. So, we'll see how it goes year 2 with Brandon Staley.
Yeah. Final team, Denver Broncos. Where are you going?
I ended up going with Kyle Fuller. It's just like, so we looked at this roster and was like, this secondary is just going to be nasty. You had Kareem Jackson, you had Justin Simmons at safety, you had Pat Surtain with their first round pick, big first round pick option. You had Ronald Darby as well that you brought in, and you brought in Kyle Fuller too. And you're just like, this might be the best secondary in football. And it did not feel like the best secondary in football at times during the season. And Kyle Fuller was giving up big play after big play. I did not think he was that great this past season, and they moved on from him for a reason, I think.
Yeah, I mean, Lamar Jackson lit it up, like as in like throwing the football, like not like running, like he lit up the defense through passing.
Yeah, it was weird. Like you kept thinking this was going to be a good secondary, but then they'd give up like random 60-yard touchdowns, and you're like, okay, well, this isn't working. Like you could also probably go with like the quarterback position here, but at the same time, like you got 3,000 yards, 18 touchdowns, 7 picks out of Teddy Bridgewater. That's basically what you expect, right?
Yeah. Teddy was not the issue last year. Again, they made the right call, improving upon it, but like he was not the issue. Denver Broncos 21st rated coverage unit according to PFF. So like I think that's the coverage in general you could probably put in there.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think I agree, and I think he was one of the biggest players that kind of stuck out as like, okay, this guy's a lot worse than what he was. But at the same time, like you said, you can go down the list and probably highlight Darby and highlight, Simmons and Jackson as struggling last season.
Yeah, I think so as well. But again, they got Russell Wilson, so they don't care.
Yeah.
All right, so that is the list.
That is our list. Obviously, some disagreements. We're seeing it already, but yeah, I mean, let us know if you disagree with anything. And I mean, I think that was pretty straightforward, though.
Yeah. Again, I think these are fun. Again, for off-season content, it's good. Good stuff. We still need a couple more. A couple more ideas to finish up the. I think the way I was thinking about it, Kyle. If this works for you, we'll do this on air. I like doing it on air sometimes. What if today is the 1st, meaning that we have a podcast on the 8th and the 15th. I was thinking the 22nd could be when we start our division, our 2022 season previews going through each division.
That sounds good to me. So we have 2 more podcasts to make up, and then the 22nd, we'll start with one of our divisions, go through each one, and that'll pretty much take us right up to September, right?
Yeah, that will take us to. It'll be the way I did it. Said it'll be right in the middle of. It'll be the middle of August, so it'll be like during preseason is when we'll stop. We'll have I think 1 or 2 more shows before the season starts.
Okay, perfect. Sounds good to me.
Yeah, we have a Nicholas Gill saying do top 32 wide receivers. We've kind of teased doing that in the past. Do you want to do a top wide receiver rankings?
Sure. We could do the 100 best 32 wide receivers.
Yes, exactly. We should do top 5 wide receivers, but then make it like a top 20, like 30 list or something like that. That's
make it top 50 or something like that.
Yeah, I think that one's pretty good. But yeah, okay, that'll be fun. So next week we will do top receivers. Might not do 32. I'm not sure what the exact number will be, but top something receivers draft coming to you next week. That should be fun. Kyle, let them know where they can find us on Twitter before we head out.
Yeah, make sure to follow us on Twitter. That is at Jackson Kruger. Make sure to follow me at by Kyle Grana, and then make sure to follow the account page at On the Sideline JK. That is at On the Sideline JK.
Yeah. Again, if you like the audio only version of podcast, you can check that out anywhere you get your podcast. This should be available. One thought I just had, Kyle. Would you rather do top wide receivers, or you want to do top skill position, most valuable skill positions in general?
Ooh, so tight ends and running backs are obviously on the board. Let's do top 32 weapons.
Okay, top 32 weapons. And are we doing most valuable or best? You want to do best?
Yeah, let's just put best.
Yeah, so just not taking positional value into account, simply how good are you? That should be fun. We're going to do top 32, so be on the lookout for that. Kyle, how many more days until football season? Is it
We
99?
have 99 days till
Yes.
football season. We're almost there. Are you watching the match tonight?
Which match?
Isn't the Brady thing tonight? Brady Rogers versus Allen
Oh,
Mahomes?
yeah. No, I'm not watching that.
No?
No. That will not be something that. Well, first off, I mean, I'm going to be watching the Lightning game tonight, so I'm going to be paying attention to that. But I've never really been wild about that stuff, to be honest.
So I hope Tom Brady hears this and knows that the Patriot fan is the loyal fan here, not the Tampa Bay fan over here.
What
Just
you watch?
just wanna
You
let
do
you know.
everything. You do everything Brady. You watch everything Brady is a part of. I bet you weren't going to watch that when there was that Brady what road trip show or whatever that got teased. I bet you weren't going to be didn't turn that onto your DVR.
I did. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I don't think so. Okay, anyone who's watching the match, tweet at Kyle. He will respond. He says he will respond to anything you tweet at him today. You tweet at something, he will respond to it.
No, that's probably not true.
Yes, Kyle will be spending all day responding. Everyone tweet at Kyle. Whatever you say, he will respond to it.
Nobody follows me on Twitter. It's okay. I don't need anyone reaching out.
Yeah, it's
to me.
funny. Every now and then, like I'll plug my Twitter on like my YouTube channel, and I'll get like 30 followers. I'm like, oh, that's interesting, and it's like I'd never do it. I'm just like, hey, it's lazy. I don't want to have to. I'm too lazy to like put the little thing in it.
Yeah, I can't blame you.
Yeah, whatever. I also kind of like my Twitter where it's at now. It's like I got like enough people to like whenever I tweet out, someone responds, but like not that many people respond.
Yeah, that's fair. It's like when is it to the point where it's like you just have too many responses?
Right, because at a certain point, like like when LeBron tweets something out and everyone says like Mickey Mouse championships. Okay, you can't even read your responses at that point. Like you don't have like a Twitter at that point. You have like a
PR
bulletin
machine.
board.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Troll Twitter is just one of the weirdest things I've ever seen.
Yeah, it is. It can be really funny too sometimes. Every now and then, there's some good stuff.
There's a good response.
Yeah, every now and then, I like some of them.
Oh man. Well, I'll see if I get any responses. I'll come back next week and report back. We'll see how it
Full Metal
goes.
6 is saying tweeting right now. So there you go. Again, thank you to everybody for listening to, if you stay to the end through all the nonsense that we do at the end of the show or even during the show. We run a loose ship here. Thank you to everybody. Thank you to everyone for watching or listening. And until next time, see you later, alligator.
Peace.